what I found in India, my very first time on stage was with Mr. Ed Sheeran. He brought me out to Mumbai, brought me out to India for my first time. And I remember before I went on stage, I was like, I've never performed here. I don't know if people will know me. I don't know if people know my music here. And then as soon as I walked on stage, bro, I thought they were there for me. They went crazy. And I immediately was just like adrenaline. My heart was pounding and I was like starting to sweat and tremble. And I was like, I'm supposed to try and play it cool right now. And like, I feel like a mess. And I remember taking the mic off and walking to the crowd and just walking towards them. They were like losing their minds. And that is beautiful. That's the kind of stuff that is what dreams are made of. And I found that when I recorded that song, anytime I would play it to anybody, there was a real magic about it. People would cry, or people would be like, oh my God, that's so impressive, or whatever. And so that became like the weapon in my back pocket. And I would use it at competitions and at shows and stuff. And
brilliant musician once said, Ozzy Osbourne was once asked, what do you think of Justin Bieber? And he used an expletive and said, who is Justin Bieber?
Okay.
And then they said, oh, you don't know. Do you listen to music? He said, I don't listen to other people's music because I fear that what goes in from here might come out from here.
It kind of reminds me of a life before music. So yeah, I tend to go back to those black painted nails and straight hair. I just flick on my forehead.
94.3 Radio 1, ladies and gentlemen. We've had the honor of having spoken to him earlier, but that was through a screen, and 6.5 inches really doesn't match up, and I mean only the screen. Calum Scott's here, ladies and gentlemen. Calum Scott's here because he's decided that he wants to tread the hierarchy of audiences in India. There's small intimate shows in closed venues, and then there's not too much, but 55,000.
Just very casual. Just very casual.
Yeah. And just another name, you know. Lollapalooza just happens to be one of the biggest festivals in the world.
Yeah.
And your name just happens to be on one of the biggest stages there. So just another day at work, Calum.
Just another day on the job. Yeah, I did wonder where you was going with that 6.5. I was like, really?
No, you know the frame is only up.
I hear you. To be honest, it's amazing to be back here in India. And like I just said to you off camera, we have 2 shows here. We have one at the Piano Man, and we have one at Lollapalooza. So it's going to be a huge contrast. But one I'm looking forward to, you know, I like to have that challenge of a different audience, a different venue space, you know, connecting with different audiences. But I don't think I'm going to have any problems with the Indian audience. They are so receptive, so into whatever I provide. If I want them to dance, they dance. If I want them to sit and listen and really be emotional, they're crying with me. You know, I feel so honoured that the Indian audiences are just so involved.
And that's the thing, is it not? I mean, involvement has been a bit of a leitmotif of your music ever since we saw you on Britain's Got Talent, and the song that you chose was 455. Were there 55,000 people at the auditions?
No, there was significantly less. There must have been like, I mean, in the room at the time when I had my audition, there must have been like maybe 1,200 people, maybe even less than that, because the cameras. So there was. It's interesting that you say that, because I only just got asked that the other day by a reporter, like, how many people were in the audience then? And I said the same thing. And I think, you know, at the time, because I was so emotionally charged, you know, my sister was the one who got the audition for us. She was the one who went on first, and she didn't get through. And then I had to go on straight after her. So, you know, part of me really wanted to impress Simon Cowell. Part of me wanted to, like, really throttle him, you know? But I think I was so concentrated on the moment of, okay, let me show them what we're made of. You know, let me use this emotion of my sister not getting through and really try and blow everybody away with it. And I think that's kind of what made the audition so successful. You know, they saw a human being who was a little bit hurt, a little bit nervous, a little bit excited, all of the human emotions that we can all relate to. And I think that's kind of why everybody sort of fell in love, I guess, with with me, not trying to be that guy, but fell in love with who I am and the fact that I'm just a human being, you know, like everybody else.
For sure. I think that was the thing, wasn't it? It was being broadcast. There were millions of people watching. There were 1,200 people in the audience. And yet, I think each and every one of us felt that you were singing for us.
Yeah.
And that contrast between the intimacy of a song being sung to a large number of people is something that you've honed to a fine art, is it not? I mean, it'd be fantastic to know how you carve the idea of the show out for where you're going.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you were coming to India, what did you carve out of that vast repertoire that you have?
Oh, it's really tough, man, because, you know, now I've got my third album. So, you know, this is 3 albums worth of material, and the features that I've done with artists like, you know, Lost Frequencies and Kygo and DJs. So it's really tough to be able to put a show together, especially when you have so much catalogue to choose from. And all of my songs are like my little babies, but, you know, like every parent, I have my favourites. And so I've chosen songs that I believe are going to work well for not just the venue that I'm in, but the amount of time that I can sing. And, you know, when we play The Piano Man, I get to do my full Avenoir show. And so that's a real roller coaster of emotions through 3 of my albums, choosing, you know, some really emotional moments, but then also some moments where people can just forget about their problems for, you know, 90 minutes. I think for the show for Lollapalooza, you got to strategize. Like, you know, 55,000 people is a lot. And so I can't expect 55,000 people to all cry simultaneously. So I'm going to choose, I've chosen a couple of emotional moments, but for the whole part, people are there to have a good time, man. And I want to make sure they have a good time. You know, crying is great, but when you get 55,000 people crying, that might be carnage, you know.
The last time I remember an Englishman in front of 55,000 people was a certain Freddie Mercury, who had them split down the middle and getting him to sing songs one and the other, which leads me to a question of control. Every artist wants to control that emotion that's running through, be it 1,200, 12,000 or 12 million people. What's your feeling of the control of music? Because you seem to think quite a lot about how you want the audiences to react to your music. There are a lot of artists who just let it out there and let people have the control. Yeah. It seems you want control over your music and your emotions. Is that true?
Yeah, I guess to some extent. I suppose my feelings on music is that it's that uncontrollable power. You know, you never know how somebody is going to react to your music. You never know, like, however you intend the music to be. You know, you could write from a very personal place and somebody might listen to that song and that might be their champion song. You know, whatever you have in mind for your song when you write it is completely different to the way that somebody receives it, you know? And I think that uncontrollability is actually quite exciting. And I think when it comes to the shows, of course I have an element of control of what I sing and how I can kind of command the crowd in a little way. But I think for me, I just love the singbacks. You know, for me, it's all about when I've written these songs, I've had my person in my mind, or I've had my memory in my mind, and then you release that song, and say, for example, You Are the Reason, that's a song that has resonated almost everywhere in the world. And when I have my crowds come to my shows and we get to that song, that in particular seems to ignite a flame in people. And when they sing it back, and I guess to answer your question more directly, the only control I really do is when I give the mic to them. And when they sing it back, you can see the magic in their eyes. You can see that they're thinking about their partner or their friends or their kids or their grandparents. You can see their stories come to life in their eyes. And I think that is magical. And that's the only control I try and have is, you know, I get them to sing the song back to me, and in that moment I just get to enjoy, you know, thousands of people singing that song back. They're stood shoulder to shoulder with other people, and yet they all have their own stories with that song, and I just think it's magical.
Most of them also seem to get the notes right when they sing.
I mean, you know? Sometimes you hand the mic to them, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna need that back because you're actually quite good. It's just crazy, like, especially with, and what I found in India, my very first time on stage was with Mr. Ed Sheeran. He brought me out to Mumbai, brought me out to India for my first time. And I remember before I went on stage, I was like, I've never performed here. I don't know if people will know me. I don't know if people know my music here. And then as soon as I walked on stage, bro, I thought they were there for me. They went crazy. And I immediately was just like adrenaline. And my heart was pounding and I was like starting to sweat and tremble. And I was like, I'm supposed to try and play it cool right now. And like, I feel like a mess. And I remember taking the mic off and walking to the crowd and just walking towards them. They were like losing their minds. And that is beautiful. That's the kind of stuff that is what dreams are made.
And that's what they say. I mean, music doesn't really have boundaries, but I think music also is the GPS of our emotion, is it not? I mean,
100%.
The best songs we always place in a place. We were in college when we heard this. Yeah. We were doing this when we heard that. And those songs become the soundtrack of our lives in that sense. Yeah. You've also taken songs that are soundtracks to people's lives and you've made them your own, which leads me to the question of covers. You seem quite comfortable with taking another song and making it your own. It's a little bit of a gray area, is it not?
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like this is all I've ever known. You know, when I started in music way back, I was in school and I took to drums. I really enjoyed playing the drums, and I was quite happy being at the back of the stage. Nobody could see me. I was quite happy just beating the life out of these drums. And then it was my sister who was the singer of the family, and I just used to go to shows and watch her perform, and I was just like, I can't believe that she's so brave. You know, she's taking something that she can't change and she's putting her heart on her sleeve and she's showing this audience what she can do, and I just thought that was so brave. And I kind of used to emulate that. When I thought nobody was in the house, I would be in my bedroom with a can of hairspray, like pretending. And one day she overheard me and she started to really push me into believing in myself. And so I started to get this, you know, a little bit of confidence. And so because I couldn't play anything other than the drums, I was like, well, I'm going to have to cover other people's songs because I have no way of playing music. And so I used to cover Ed Sheeran, but then I also used to cover like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, and I had that very like crooner kind of a way into music. And that was all I've ever known, is covering music. So when I happened across Robin's Dancing on My Own, I just knew the song. I knew the song, I knew it, I loved it. But I tried to find online, I'm like, piano arrangement of Robin's Dance on My Own. And I found this beautiful piano version, and it gave me the opportunity to really find identity. You know, I wasn't copying the original track, I was singing the lyrics, but over just the piano. And I found that when I recorded that song, anytime I would play it to anybody, there was a real magic about it. People would cry, or people would be like, oh my God, that's so impressive, or whatever. And so that became like the weapon in my back pocket. And I would use it at competitions and at shows and stuff, and essentially at Britain's Got Talent. And I think that's kind of, that set me on a path. It was after then that I got signed by Capitol Records in America, and then I started writing an album. But until then, I'd only done covers. And so now when I revisit covers, it feels as normal to me as writing music. You know?
Sure.
Yeah, especially with the Whitney Houston record.
It's a weapon, but it can also be a double-edged sword, considering what another brilliant musician once said. Ozzy Osbourne was once asked, what do you think of Justin Bieber? Okay. And he used an expletive and said, who is Justin Bieber?
Okay.
And then they said, oh, you don't know. Do you listen to music? He said, I don't listen to other people's music because I fear that what goes in from here might come out from here.
That's he's scared that he's going to start singing "Baby" by Justin
Bieber. I guess if you bite the head of a bat, you're allowed to say things like that.
He's entitled to his opinion, bless him.
But I do think that there is a point to be taken about influences, that it does happen that what goes in from here sometimes makes a home here, and then when it's coming out from here, derivative sounds become a little bit of a millstone around a singer's neck. Do they not?
Yeah.
Is that a fear that you also face sometimes when you look into the mirror about singing other people's songs?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a fear personally. I think for me, I was like really heavily influenced by my mum when I was listening to music. So when we were growing up, mum always played her favourite songs, and her collection of songs came from, you know, Tina Turner and Diana Ross and Shirley Bassey and all these huge singers. So that was constantly around us when I was young. And obviously, you know, as every teenager, I was like, I don't want to listen to mum's music anymore. And that's when I started listening to NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and Spice Girls and pop groups. And so, and then that was my thing. I liked pop, and you know, a little bit after that, I became an emo kid, and it became all about My Chemical Romance, Linkin Park, you know, Fall Out Boy, all of those guys. And so I guess my music's gone on a little bit of a journey. But when it came to songwriting, I guess, like you said about that influence, I couldn't help but want to write big emotional ballads, you know, and songs like You Are the Reason was definitely influenced by, you know, Whitney Houston and Tina Turner and Diana Ross. So I guess in some ways it can be a little bit like, in some ways you might be destined in the way that you're influenced by your music that your parents played you when you were growing up. But then in some ways, I guess it's quite beautiful that it's come full circle, you know, and the songs I used to listen to in the car have come all the way around to me being an artist and starting to write music like that. So for me, it feels very cathartic.
There's also the fact that, you know, as a listener of music who doesn't necessarily know how to play something, there's always been a security blanket song. If I'm in office and I'm not feeling very good, there's Eddie Vedder in my head saying, I'm still alive. There's, you know, bizarre places have, is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? I've always wondered, do people who make music their profession also have a security blanket of a song? Do you have a song that you hum to yourself because it's just so internalized? Do you have a security blanket song?
I don't know, you know. It's a good question. I mean, there's certain songs from the past that have always stayed with me. Like I said, with, you know, with Whitney and stuff like that. That's why the duet I did with her voice for I Want to Dance with Somebody, that was a song that I do still love, but loved for a long, long time. And I remember, but you know, even before I started touring with Ed Sheeran, I started doing it on stage. I was doing that kind of a mashup years before then. You know, so that's obviously a song that stuck around. But you know, like I said, I'm a big emo kid at heart, and these days, you know, I go back to listening to Evanescence and you know those kind of big, because they were still very emotional. I mean, it's in the name, right? Emo. It was very emotional songs back then. So when I listen to that stuff, it reminds me of growing up, and you know, it kind of reminds me of a life before music. So yeah, I tend to go back to those black painted nails and straight hair. I had to flick on my forehead.
And Whitney Houston hitting that note on I Want to Feel the Heat.
Bro,
man.
I know. It's, for me, is in I Will Always Love You. It's just that those big soaring notes, you're just like...
And that little coiling of the spring before letting the high note hit. I mean, you know, by reflection, you felt great when that note was hit.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the question of scale. I mean, we began with the question of scale about the hierarchy of audience, but we've all grown up with artists who were rocking crowds in stadia. Post-COVID, most of the music that's being made and consumed is usually within the four walls of a home, of a living room, etc. Do you think that scale is as relevant to music as it was, say, before COVID, or when the mega stars were treading the stages of Wembley and other big venues?
Yeah, I guess just the music industry as a whole has evolved, I guess you would call it. I guess I try and think of it in the same way as, you know, from when people were doing live shows and things were recorded to tape, to when people were putting things on CDs, you know, and then ultimately online streaming. And I think it's changing, and that provides challenges, and it also provides, you know, a bit of reflection on better times, I would argue, in some cases. You know, music's not consumed as publicly as it was once, was. It's now quite personal. You know, music is consumed usually on headphones, and people consume it directly And music now isn't necessarily just to be listened to, it's to be used, you know, in videos and in lip syncs. And so music and people listening to it and people using it is changed a lot. I think for me as an artist, I feel like I've got a foot in tradition and I've got a foot in modern. And I feel like I still want to do these shows where people come and perform. I mean, it wasn't even just before Christmas. I was kind of flicking through YouTube and I was looking at Queen at Live Aid. And I was just watching that and I was just blown away. I mean, goosebumps from the amount of people that were there, but the celebration of what Freddie and the band did. And I worry that we don't necessarily have that as much anymore.
Are we losing the community experience of music, you think?
I think so, a little bit. I'd like to be hopeful and say that I think that COVID had a lot to do with that. You know, people had gone from celebrating together to not wanting to be next to each other because of this fear of what COVID was. And I think that discouraged a lot of people, especially maybe the elderly or the vulnerable, from getting in large groups. And I think some people that will never happen again, which is really, really sad, understandably so. I think for us, we've just got to demonstrate that there is still magic in live shows, that live shows is a very unique experience. I mean, you can watch YouTube all day. It's still never going to compare. It's never going to compare to being at a concert. You know, when I perform at my own concerts, you know, especially in the front few rows, you can see how much it means for people to be there. You know, some people have queued outside all day long and they've been there, they've bought all your records, they've bought all of your merchandise, they've waited on every breath of your social media posts. And I think you've got it like that. For me is the reason to keep coming back to places and performing for them, you know?
For sure, for sure. Is there a venue which you look at yourself walking into in slow motion with people calling out your name in your dreams? Is there a venue?
The Royal Albert Hall in London is definitely one of those venues. I've played it before as part of a compilation of artists. I've never done it as just builders myself. That's a big dream come true for me, for the heart of my country, to perform there. I think probably the same with a venue in Nashville called the Grand Ole Opry. You know, another iconic venue, which I just think would be so good. And if I dare dream big, somewhere like Madison Square Gardens, I think would be incredible. But I love the journey, man. I love the fact that I've done small venues all the way up through to stadiums with Mr. Sheeran, you know, and played in open air venues, in stadiums, in small pubs. I think that kind of grows your character. It rounds you out as a person, as an artist, and it humbles you as well. You know, I love the fact that, you know, in this week I'm going to perform to a little under 1,000 people, and then a lot over 55,000.
Excellent.
You know.
And finally, the future of the festival. What do you see that as?
I think festivals is something that has kept its feet firmly on the ground. You know, Glastonbury, for example, in the UK, it doesn't seem like there's any sign of that stopping. And I think that's it's same to be said for Lollapalooza, same to be said for a lot of places around the world, Rock in Rio, a lot of festivals that I think people, when they see a festival, especially for people right now where, you know, it's hard. You know, it's hard in life to get by. Grocery shopping's never been so expensive. Living costs have never been so expensive. So people, quite rightly, don't want to part with their money. And I understand that. And I think for festivals, when people pay for their ticket, they're getting their money's worth. You know, it's an all-day thing or maybe a whole weekend. They're seeing various artists. They get to spend the whole day there. And I think people are getting value for their money with festivals. So I'd like to think that festivals is something that carries on. But concerts too, I think we as the artists and as the festival organisers and the agents, we have a lot to do to try and make this available for more people, you know, for people who are on a lesser wage that maybe can't afford these tickets. We've got a lot to do to make it affordable and make sure that festivals and concerts are something that everybody can enjoy.
I'm sure we all can try harder to get the corner of the lips moving northwards a little. It's always lovely.
I agree.
We're living in the world of social media, so we cannot end without a listicle. So 3 points in which you see the future of music.
Oh my God. I can't deny, and we can't argue about the elephant in the room, AI is definitely going to be a part of music in the future, I believe. I hope for the good and for people to use it as a tool and not to replace musicians, artists. I feel like there's going to be a movement in terms of being able to see your artists that you loved that are no longer with us in concert. I think via projections or via, you know, a way of being able to bring back people. I know that there was a Whitney Houston live experience where they used a projection. And I think that will be something that people want to go and see.
But I have a problem with that, which is that if we keep looking back, we're never going to look forward.
That's true, that's true. But then again, the way of music, nothing is linear anymore. You know, people's songs that from way back are becoming to have a resurgence. So I guess music is kind of a lot less linear in that way. And then I guess my third point would be that, you know, concerts are going to be attended virtually. I think people are going to be able to put a headset on and be at their concert, and you know, sat there in the comfort of their living room watching a concert. Which I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I guess till that happens, we can all put on that security blanket that we were talking about.
Yes, please.
Of kicking up some dirt, quite literally,
and
looking at each other in awe and saying, "Ah, did you hear that?" Because that, to us, till something else happens, is going to be music. And for giving us that music with which we can go, "Oh, that's beautiful." Calum Scott, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
That's Calum Scott, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what you heard, you know, comment section's open. Everyone's got two opinions. Spare one for us. But thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. Calum, this has been an honor. Thank you for your time.
Shukriya.
94.3 One World, your station.